I would begin learning this one with my metronome set to a really slow 4 and gradually speed it up till I can subdivide in a fast 2. This piece needs to have a feeling of being in 2, but your rhythm may be sloppy if you start with it in 2. So I would start with a 4 and make sure that my notes after the rest or after the ties are in the right spot. The end of the tied note should be released early, so there's a feeling of space after each tied note. So da-dee, da-dee, and that'll give it that feeling of moving forward and also help keep it from dragging. In my opinion, the most difficult aspect of this selection is the articulation. Each note must be clean and have a good tone. It's more difficult in the required staccato style. So some tips for that are to keep the air and tongue forward in the mouth, bring the tongue down quickly, and you must tongue clean and crisp at a loud and soft dynamic. So I like to practice articulating on, like if I take the first phrase, I would practice the rhythm articulation on a single note. And I like to pick like the lowest note of the phrase or the highest note of the phrase and practice it that way. And then I'll add the notes back in. Practice slowly. The speed will come easily once your articulation and muscle memory have been properly trained. Practice at all different dynamics. When playing soft, try to remain tension-free and keep your air fast. Remember, your lips have to buzz, and if your air changes or is not fast, your lips won't buzz, they won't respond. So you're going to have to work on that. Try to make it sound clean and not like a hammer. One of the things, let's see, let me continue and then I'll come back to that. This piece has a lot of wide intervals that must be practiced on your mouthpiece, so go slow and get them accurately in your ear. Also pay attention to how you articulate the ta on the lower notes and the t on the higher. This will help with note accuracy and less cracking of notes. Maintaining a steady tempo throughout will be a challenge. Make sure that you work with your metronome. This selection also has a lot of second valve to first and third valve combinations, and that's the trickiest one for trumpet players. So a good hand position is going to be a must on this. You know, a lot of times we can get away with not having really great hand position since we just have 3 little buttons, we're little trumpet players. But on this one, with that first to third, it's really going to be important that you have good hand position. Both selections require great flexibility, the ability to lip slur easily. Spend time daily in the Schlossberg book. I'll come back to that. This book has been the most important book to improving my playing, and I cannot emphasize the need to practice selection on your mouthpiece enough. So the beginning, bring out the accents with just, I would just use think of tonguing firmer. Make sure you release after the ties. When you get to the end of the first line, make sure that the low notes that you really use lots of air to get those through. So that would probably take the most air out of everything in that top line, is that last measure. In the second one, you want to keep the same intensity of the first line, but soft, so you can accent even within that soft dynamic. And again, in the third measure, the articulation of T is really going to be important there. Let's see. Third line is some circled notes for intonation issues. Again, I tried to write T's through there as reminders for the students. I tried to mark smart places to breathe. Obviously, this is just a C major scale almost all the way through with a little bit of C minor thrown in for a moment. So it shouldn't be hard technically. The tricky part is going to be in the intervals and in the articulation. Let's see, moving down to the 6th line, you have probably one of the most difficult parts of the etude is this first measure right here with the big wide leaps in it. I would practice it slurred and slow and lots of buzzing before I tried to, you know, just got to make sure each note goes in the right spot. And if you don't know how it sounds, then you're going to have greater chance of cracking notes, okay? Let's see, moving. Okay, so that one's pretty much self-explanatory. It's just going to take lots of mouthpiece practicing, and again, I would practice it, especially parts of that really slurred to help with the airstream and note accuracy. Let's go to the front page of the handout, so I can, before I run out of time, give you just some things that I try to do or that I try to have my students do to work on. Obviously, the most important aspects of trumpet playing are breathing, embouchure strength, flexibility, articulation, finger training. So embouchure strength, I work on lots of long tones and making sure that I'm breathing correctly so that I can last longer. And then, that's not going to come until you've spent lots of time on your horn. Flexibility, the first book I have my students buy, like I said, is the Schlossberg Daily Drills and Technical Studies. If you don't have this book, you need to get it, okay? This is, in my opinion, the most important book that you can have in your library. Articulation, the ability to start a note cleanly and in the correct style. I have my kids work out of the Arbin book for that. There's a lot of articulation exercises in that. Finger training, scales and arpeggio work. I use the Arbin book for that too with my kids. And then there's the Technical Studies for the Cornet by Clark. It has really good finger twisters and all the keys. It's a must-have in your library. The better trained your fingers are to play in all the keys, the easier to learn all the notes of your etude. And then equipment, make sure that your instrument works as well as possible. That means that the first and third valve slides must move easily. Okay. I do use a burp. I don't have it on right now, but I do use it when I'm practicing so that I can practice the buzzing accurately. And then I recommend, you talk to anybody and you'll hear all different recommendations of mouthpieces, but all I can do is tell you what I use and what I like. And I use a 3C because I don't play as often as I used to. But a lot of really good kids use the 1 1/4 C. That's really advanced, college age, and really good high school players. And then I use the younger C, 7C or 5C. If I have a really good student, by the end of their 8th grade year, I'll put them on a 3C. And then most of my high school kids I would put on 3Cs, unless they're just really strong players. I play on a box Strat. But I really like the Edwards also. Of course, Yamaha makes good horns. I already talked about practice audition situations, but make sure does anybody have any questions about the first or second selection that I can help you with? Okay. I've sort of been jumping around on my handout, but I think I'm out of time, so I have to stop. But I would like to say that do not rely solely on learning the region music to make yourself a great player. I tell my kids all this analogy all the time. Just like in sports, they do not only practice by playing game, they work hard to develop muscles, flexibility, and skills to make them a good athlete. If you're not working on the skills to become a good trumpet player, the selection will be frustrating and your progress will be slow. So you have to spend as much time developing your fundamental skills as you do learning your region music. I have kids that will go home and practice their region music and they'll come back the next week and it's not really better. I mean, the rhythms, the fingers might be a little better, but the playing's not unless you're focusing on that stuff. So you really do have to work just as much on the fundamentals as you do. And you'll be really pleased with how much faster you work. There's no instant magic formula for becoming a great player. It takes time on the horn and intelligent practicing. There's lots of good teachers out there that can help you, and there's lots of methods out there that are good resources. So I listed one webpage that has some good method books listed on it that you can refer to too, as well as the ones that I've listed for you today. I hope that you got a couple of good things out of this that you can take back. If you're a student, I hope that you'll use the cheat sheets to know what to watch out for and how to practice and what to listen for, basically. So thank you for being here today. I really appreciate your time.